It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting just by emailing me at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. All of our podcasts you can find at Spreaker.com. Friday nights, 8 p.m., I do a live show. We put up 2 hours of brand new content every single week on Spreaker.com. There's a chat room. You get an email notification when we put up new content. And I also play repeats there every single night of the week, too. As a matter of fact, if you go there and Google Dave Emory, the legendary Dave Emory, from SpitfireList.com, WFMU, and also his Dave Emory Patreon, where you can find all his content now. You can find the first show we did with Mr. Dave Emory, the legendary Dave Emory. Mr. Dave Emory, are you there?
Well, that depends on one's opinion and one's meaning of the term there. Maybe one could argue that there's no there. But what the heck? You know, I'm here in spirit and body and hopefully name and let's hope the brain and the intellect follow. Anyway, it's great to be back, Ed. The only unfortunate thing is that there really isn't much to talk about. I mean, that's a bad use of humor. There is only too much to talk about. And by the way, one of the things that I have done is that I have unpacked a couple of the articles that I have written specifically for my Patreon site, and they've been behind a paywall, but I've sent them to Ed for his perusal. And the title, there are two articles, one is sequel to the other, is The Walls Came Tumbling Down, Nazis, Fascists, and the 9/11 Attacks. And then there's a sequel, The Walls Came Tumbling Down, Nazis, Fascists, and the 9/11 Attacks, Part 2. So with the recent governmental flip-flop where some of the Guantanamo detainees who were involved in the attacks, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, among others, they were offered a plea deal, in effect, life imprisonment in exchange for not facing execution. And then Mrs. Austin's baby boy, Miles, the Secretary of Defense, turned that one over. So once again, the 9/11 attacks are back in the news. And we're all hearing all sorts of BS about Iran, about terrorism, about this, about that. The only thing, Ed, that the contemporary political landscape would be really good for is organic farming, because there is so much fresh fertilizer around. I mean, my goodness, spread it around. Just think of all the vegetables you could grow. I mean, it's just marvelous. And so I guess it's like Billy Crystal in that film, marvelous, simply marvelous.
Right, right. Dave, let me ask you a quick question. Now, you've been doing this for so many years. You've poured your heart, your blood, sweat, and tears into this kind of work, exposing fascism, exposing Nazism. How do you feel? Do you feel that we're in a better place, or things are getting worse?
I have mixed feelings. Let me respond to that question in sequence, in parts. As far as what I do, well, let me see. This may not sit well with some of your audience, but I am Buddhist. It's not inconsistent with the better teachings of Jesus, in my opinion. Phil Jackson, the coach of the Lakers and the former star guard of the New York Knicks, is both a Christian and a Buddhist. They are not incompatible. But I really feel this is my destiny as a sentient being, as someone who has incarnated. I definitely believe there is a higher power. And I believe this is my calling, because doing this, I'm a swan. Doing anything else pretty much, I'm an ugly duckling. And now, that's a transition to, I feel very good about what I have done and about what I am doing. When I first went on the air in 1979 and I was talking about fascism coming to America, people looked at me like I had a D blank 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 going out of my head. You know, it is in rat, and everybody did a rat. And now, even in today's Western print edition of the of the New York Times, the great lady, the CIA's #1 propaganda asset, there is an op-ed column. I believe the author is Michelle Goldberg. I may be wrong, but she's talking about a new book by Jack the Soviet that has been endorsed by J.D. Vance, the Republican vice presidential candidate, and it was Francisco Franco, the fascist dictator of Spain. And Franco's Spain has been the epicenter of so much. And it was Augusto Pinochet, the fascist dictator of Chile, and the title of it is The Unhumans. It basically refers to anyone who doesn't agree with the far right as an unhuman, or as the Nazis called it, a subhuman. Paul Krugman is writing about fascism. So when it gets to the point where the New York Times is talking about fascism, you know it is bloody late in the day, Ed Opperman, ladies and gentlemen, and all the ships at sea. It is really late in the day. Yeah. Now, that having been said, I'm also, struggling with the exigencies of being an old man, and I'm 75, and impoverished, and with, assorted medical conditions that I'm dealing with successfully, but it ain't easy. I'm about to begin my 46th year on the air. When my first broadcast was on my 30th birthday, so every time I have a belly button birthday, I begin another year on the air. And for most of my life, I've been doing this free. I can no longer do that. I've got to earn some money. I'm doing a Patreon site now with 3 weekly talks of anywhere from a half hour to an hour in length, and also bi-weekly Zoom talks featuring prominent guests, and that's for just $15 a month. And then for $22.50 a month, you get all of that, plus you get the article sent to two I've sent you it. Yes. Normally those are behind the paywall. But you are a fellow warrior in the trenches facing the onslaught of fascism, so I unpack them for you to peruse. And then for $32.50 a month, you get all of that, plus you get to participate directly in the bi-weekly Zoom talk. So that is a characteristically long-winded Dave Emory way of saying, there's an old blues song called Two Trains Running. And it actually refers to an extramarital affair. It refers to one train runs by night, one train runs by day. But I think if we take that metaphor and take it out of the context of marital infidelity or relationship infidelity, and use that for the context for your question, I think there are two trains running on the same track. One of which, I couldn't feel better philosophically and religiously, frankly, because there is a higher power than what I'm doing. I believe I was called to do this, and part of my challenge going forward, Ed, is to lose the pain that I still experience in relation to all of the people who were unkind, who attacked me and did all kinds of things. It is not for me to correct them. And yet, it's not for me to burden myself with their pain. So part of the task of my life going forward is to forgive those who have not only attacked me in the past, but made my life more difficult. Yeah. Because sadly, very sadly, very tragically sadly, Ed, things are coming to fruition as I had predicted. Again, when the New York Times is talking about fascism coming to America, it's late in the day because they were the publishers of the Warren Report. They are the CIA's #1 propaganda asset. And when they say when they warn about fascism coming to America, you know that the rotund opera singer with the horns and the lance and the armored breastplate is singing the aria. Okay, or perhaps that should be aria, so A-R-Y-A, and there's a pun there. And yet at the same time, I'm experiencing, because I am incarnated. I am in flesh. My spirit is housed in this body. And this body is experiencing all the problems that come with age and poverty, which ain't real great, So there is, again, a very characteristically long-winded answer to your question. I think on the balance, I couldn't feel more fulfilled. I've also, by the way, launched a new co-host, not first in decades. He's just brilliant. He's a combat veteran, 10 years, fully disabled medically, and absolutely brilliant with a capital A and a capital B. And that listeners have commented, without exception, they like the interviews I've done with him, the conversations. And they have all commented that my voice has an up note to it. I seem more upbeat and glad to be doing that. And that's absolutely correct. My worst critics have said I was nuts. And perhaps, Ed, the fact that I get that level of emotional satisfaction from working with this new co-host, maybe that could be seen as proof positive that my critics are correct. I also have made a 32 gigabyte. The next one is going to be larger because we filled it up, flash drive of all of my life's work, plus a mini library of old anti-fascist books available for free to benefit KPFK, one of the stations I work at. And I am hoping that everyone, you, Ed, and all of the listeners will get that. Again, it's available for a very modest fee. I get no money from that. Again, perhaps proof positive that my worst critics are correct. Perhaps I'm nuts. Maybe not profiting from my own life's work. Maybe that is crazy. Certainly, it isn't very au courant. Oh boy, is that a polite word? Again, I'm learning to be polite. Something that doesn't come naturally to me. So, I feel on the one hand, I've never felt better. And yet, honestly, Ed, I'm afraid, because I didn't think it was this long. And, dealing with the physical vagaries that come with being 75 years of age, and having basically, given my life's work away, it's frightening, and again, I'll add this addendum, and then you ask me any question. Take this conversation in any direction you feel would be useful. But when I first started out, the better part of half a century ago, and my involvement came from studying the assassination of President Kennedy, and there are I told my listeners that there are two events, particularly the younger listeners. If you want to understand the world you're living in, you need to understand two events, and they are inextricably linked. One is the assassination of President Kennedy, and the other is the Second World War. Because as I began studying JFK's killing, I began coming across all these Nazis, not only domestic Nazis like George Lincoln Rockwell, the Führer of the American Nazi Party, whose Arlington, Virginia name and address, including the name Lincoln Rockwell, which only his familiars called him, were in the alleged communist Lee Harvey Oswald's address book.
Really?
And also Dan Burroughs, another American Nazi Party member, who was in the same military unit as commanded by General Edwin Walker, whose name also crops up in connection with the Kennedy assassination. And I also began coming across Nazis who were brought in at the end of World War II, part of the Galen organization. Some of the SS scientists brought in the Project Paperclip. And I said to myself, and then I'm going to edit this slightly because I know this gets broadcast on radio stations. I said to myself, what the bleep hey? What is going on here? And I began studying the history of fascism and assassination is inextricably linked with the rise of fascism. Long before Hitler came to power, and Hitler he wasn't a nut. He was an undercover agent for the political department of the Reichswehr, the German army under General von Massow. He was a spook, and there was an assassination program in Weimar, Germany, where not only members of the far left, but also conservative social democrats like Walter von Rathenau were systematically assassinated by those units, which were being commanded by Ernst Röhm, who wasn't just a disgruntled veteran. He was another spook. And in Japan, the rise of fascism was paid, the way for the rise of fascism was paid by a wave of political assassinations, including, perhaps most famously, what's known as the May 15th incident. That's May 15th, 1932, when Prime Minister Kai Inukai, the Prime Minister of Japan, was murdered by naval cadets from the Native Land Loving School. And when I learned about that, when I saw what happened at JFK, when I began looking at these Nazis and wondering again, WTFA, I thought we took care of them in World War II. And when I realized what was going on, I saw myself, and this, I'm going to apologize to you, Ed, and to your listeners. What I'm about to say may sound really silly. It may sound foolish. It may sound childish. It may sound, conceited. It's not meant to be any of those things. But I saw myself as kind of an anti-fascist Paul Revere. Instead of riding through the streets of Boston, in the wee hours coming, the redcoats are coming, the redcoats are coming. I got on the radio and I was saying, the brown troops are coming, the brown troops are coming.
Dave Emory, at a time when that wasn't popular, okay, this was groundbreaking stuff. Now everybody's talking about this kind of stuff. But back then, 1979, this was out on a limb. And this is why the audience, we need to show respect to our elders, the founding fathers of this type of radio and this type of exposure, and support Mr. Emory and support his Patreon there in his late years, that he could have a substance to continue his work. We're lucky to have his work to begin with, and we should all be supporting this. If you go to the Dave Emory Patreon.
You can do that. You can also, there's a link to sign up on the Spitfirelist.com website. That's the website that has all of my life's work on it, available for free, by the way, including some old anti-fascist books. And we'll talk more about that later. But I saw myself as an anti-fascist Paul Revere. Instead of riding through the streets of Boston, warning, the redcoats are coming, the redcoats are coming. I'm saying the brown troops are coming, the brown troops are coming. Yeah. They murdered the president. This country's going to the fascists. And I could not have imagined that people would lean out and say, hey, shut up, buddy, we're trying to sleep, But, sometimes one learns that there is an airplane there by backing into the propeller, and I did. And now I'm being proved correct. And I should say that I'm also following in the footsteps of my late dear friend, frankly murdered, May Brussel. Yeah. And beyond that, there is another generation of researchers that have developed. And that's why I'm so proud, I'm so satisfied, so fulfilled to have Monty, that's his nickname, as my new co-host. And get just brilliant, brilliant work with two capital B's and a capital W. It's very fulfilling to have created a legacy like this, but it also is so challenging. Yeah. And, I didn't think I was going to live this long. And then it's the old cliche, if I'd known I was going to live this long, I would have taken better care of myself. I did my best, but I've been through a lot. And so, it's great to be here. It's great to hear people like you, Ed, talking about people like me. And now,
and also May Brussels too. We play the May Brussels archives every Sunday morning in cooperation with the May Brussels Project with the daughters over there. But Dave, let's get into this. We only have about a half hour left. Let's get into this. The walls came tumbling down. Nazis, fascists, and the 9/11 attacks. Now you've traced these Nazi involvement in this all the way back to the Oklahoma City bombings.
Yes, well, there are what I call evidentiary tributaries running in the direction of the first World Trade Center attack, the Oklahoma City bombing, and even going all the way back to World War II. A bank account with an unlimited line of credit was being maintained for Osama bin Laden in a bank called the Bank Al-Taqwa. The guy who was doing that was named Ali bin Mussolini. When information became public about this, he was found dead in his Geneva, Switzerland apartment. And that, people can say what they want. They may think that was coincidence. I don't. Previously, bin Mussolini had been under indictment in the U.S. for attempting to corner the silver market. And in that regard, he was working with Nelson Bunker Hunt. And the Bank Al-Taqwa was founded by, again, a guy named Yusuf Naba, N-A-B-A. He was a German intelligence agent in World War II. He was an agent of the Abwehr, German military intelligence, even though he was quite young. And he also is a member of the Muslim Brotherhood, which one hears about being a wonderful organization. It is an Islamic fascist organization. It was aligned with the Third Reich, with Mussolini, and like so many of these Nazis and fascists, it was incorporated into the U.S. and British intelligence establishments at the end of World War II. The driving force, and again, an unlimited line of credit was available to Al-Qaeda through the Bank Al-Taqwa, managed by the late Ali bin Mussolini. And the driving force behind the Bank Al-Taqwa was François Genoux, not a name that people know much about. Very, very important, with two capital V's and the capital I. François Genoux was not only a key Nazi intelligence agent of Swiss origin, he also was very much involved with the Nazi diaspora, spreading Nazi monies to the post-World War II Nazi diaspora. And perhaps most significantly, he was the heir to the political last will and testament. Heir to the political last will and testament of Adolf Hitler, Martin Bormann, and Joseph Goebbels, and also the heir to their collective literary works. And Yusef Naba, according to the Asia Times, the respected English language newspaper out of Hong Kong, Yusef Naba helped a guy named Hajamin al-Husseini to escape from France to the Middle East. Hajamin al-Husseini was a major general in the Waffen-SS. He also was an imam in Islam. He was the leader of the first Palestinian national. He was the first leader of the Palestinian national movement. I don't want to get into the whole Israeli-Palestinian thing here. It's so complicated and so long. He also recruited not only 3 Balkan Muslim Waffen-SS divisions, the 13th Waffen-SS Division or Hanjar Division, the 21st Waffen-SS Division or Skanderbeg Division, composed largely of Albanian Muslims, and the 24th or Kama Division, another Balkan Muslim Waffen-SS Division. That was just in the Balkans. He also recruited, for example, the Waffengruppe der SS Krim, composed of Chechen Muslims fighting against the Soviet Union. And again, it was Yusef Naba who helped him escape from France, where he was a prisoner, to Germany. And one could not exaggerate the importance of Hajamin al-Husseini. A person who became his acolyte and protege is another key member of the Bank Al-Taqwa. That was a guy named Ahmed Huber, Alfred Huber. Again, another Swiss national and someone who became a Nazi. Also a member of the Avalon-Gemeinschaft. It's a Swiss Nazi occult group. Another member of the board of directors of the Bank Al-Taqwa was a guy named Alessandro Karim Ghe, spelled Ghe. He was an Italian Muslim, and he also was a member of the Ordine Nuovo. That is an Italian fascist group very much connected to the Propaganda Due Lodge. And Ordine Nuovo was founded by a guy named Pino Rauti. Pino Rauti was a veteran of the Salo Republic. That was the lump fascist government of Italy set up by the SS after they invaded and conquered northern Italy when fascist Italy surrendered to the Allies and switched sides. And the Bank al-Taqwa, again, they're inextricably linked with Al-Qaeda. And in Federal Record 186, the title of that is called, What Does the W in George W. Bush stand for? I recorded that in the last week of December of 1999, the last week of that calendar year, because it was already apparent that he would be the Republican nominee for president, and with CIA headquarters being named after his father, George H.W. Bush, I took it as a given that he would win the election, and he did, quote, win, unquote, the, quote, election, unquote, thanks to the Supreme Court, which gave him the presidency. But his first business, Arbustel Energy, was financed in part by the family of Osama bin Laden. There was a book called Fortunate Son by the late J.H. Hatfield that misidentifies Salem bin Laden as Osama's father. Salem was actually his brother. His father was named Mohammed bin Laden, and by the way, Adnan Khashoggi, the weapons dealer extraordinaire, got his start in business with a $25 million truck deal with Mohammed bin Laden, Osama's father. But the point being that some of the money that was used to finance George W. Bush's first energy company, Arbustel Energy, came from the family of Osama bin Laden. Now, when your commander-in-chief, which George W. Bush was, is, when he was in office, he was the commander of the military. When he is A, deserter from the Texas Air National Guard, and B, when his first business was financed in part by the family of the guy who is his ostensible opposing commander-in-chief, Osama bin Laden, how could one expect anything else but debacle? And it was. I mean, how could people have expected the war in Afghanistan to go well? It didn't. And there are indications that perhaps when Osama bin Laden was cornered at Tora Bora by the Army Rangers, that perhaps he was deliberately allowed to escape courtesy of Dick Cheney. And how could anyone possibly have felt the invasion of Iraq would go well? A, Saddam Hussein had nothing to do with 9/11. He didn't have WMDs. And something a lot of people don't realize is that Saddam Hussein was put in power by the CIA precisely because he is a stone killer. And that's why the CIA put him in power, was to get rid of a lot of Iraqis, which he did. But the bottom line, let's play a little game here. Let's play. You remember the old cliche? Let's do a multiple choice game here, very quickly.
Okay.
Because we hear all about how Israel was behind the 9/11 attacks, but the invasion of Iraq. When Iraq was invaded, the president and the vice president of the U.S., George W. Bush and Dick Cheney, were A, rabbis, or B, petroleum industry CEOs in the state of Texas.
Oh, it's multiple choice because they were petroleum executives in Texas.
Yes, right. You've got it. Okay.
What do I win?
You win the first part, but now there are more. Now, our second question. At the time of the invasion of Iraq, the National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice, later Secretary of State, was A Hebrew cantor, or B, a member of the board of directors of Chevron Oil, Standard Oil of California, or for whom an oil tanker, the Lady Condoleezza, was named?
Yeah, I would suspect Chevron, yeah. I would suspect Chevron, yeah.
Okay. You got it again, man. Another prize. Now, here we go. This is exciting. The audience, yeah. Okay, now, at the time of the invasion of Iraq, the Energy Secretary, Matthew Simmons, was A, Yiddish short story writer, or B, a petroleum industry CEO from the state of Texas.
Yeah, I notice a pattern forming. I would say petroleum, the state of Texas, right?
All right, yes, yay. Okay, you've got 3 prizes in. Okay, let's keep going here. Now, Iraq is best known for the fact that A, its territorial waters have the greatest annual yield of gefilte fish, or B, it has the second largest proven oil reserves in the Middle East.
Yeah, oil.
Oh, yes, absolutely right. Yay. Okay. One more prize and you get the van prize. Now, let's have a question. Do you operate a motor vehicle, Ed?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Now, the last time, and this is audience participation. The last time, and now, of course, this has changed somewhat because now we have electric cars, but the last time you filled up your gas tank, did you fill it up with A, matzo ball soup, or B, gasoline or diesel fuel?
Gasoline.
Yay! You win the grand prize! Yay! I mean, maybe this sounds silly, but when you've heard this, Israel is behind it, and by the way, the first oil concession in Iraq, once it was conquered, was given to Hunt Oil. That's the same oil company founded by H.L. Hunt. I forgot whether the head of it at the time was either Ray or Herbert Hunt, but he was on President Bush's Foreign Intelligence Advisory Board. And so they got the first oil concession in Iraq. These things are not difficult to find out. Now, one of the Bibles for the far right, I don't like far right, for fascist Bibles, is the Turner Diaries. It was the role model for Timothy McVeigh in the Oklahoma City bombing, and it also was the blueprint, the Bible, if you will, for the Nazi terror group, the Order, which held forth in the 1980s. Now, the climactic episode of the Turner Diaries is a low-level suicide aerial attack on the Pentagon, and it takes place on the German date of destiny, which is November 9th. Quick, Ed, how would the German write the date November 9th?
Oh, that's very interesting. I'm assuming it's like it would look like 9/11.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And one of the things that happens in the Turner Diaries is that the terror group, the Order, bring down a 100-story skyscraper in Midtown Manhattan. Wow. Now, of course, Ed, I'm just a conspiracy theorist, and the Turner Diaries is just a novel. Imagine something like that happening in real life. A terrorist group bringing down a 100-story skyscraper in Midtown Manhattan and launching a low-level suicide aerial attack on the Pentagon. That couldn't happen in real life. Could it then?
A couple of silly gooses here.
Yes. And the Bank Alpaca is just one of the conduits of, again, Nazi intelligence or Nazi involvement in the September 11th attacks. It's very, very important. When there was a bust on March 20th of 2002 of institutions and individuals linked to the funding of terrorism, including and especially people linked to the Bank Alpaca. Well, many of the individuals have links to the Bank Alpaca, and in turn they were inextricably linked with the Republican Party, with Karl Rove, with Grover Norquist, and with, drumroll fanfare audience, George W. Bush. And they have links to the bank Al-Taqwa. I don't have time to go into it here. The interesting thing is that investigation, which was launched by Paul O'Neill and the Treasury Department, because the Secret Service is under the direction of the Treasury Department, it went no place. And Paul O'Neill was fired, basically, in December of the following year. And the investigation was deep six. The guy who was the head of the FBI, and according to many sources, the guy who helped to torpedo that investigation, was none other than Robert Mueller.
Really?
A very special indeed. You know, and by the way, the deep politics really comes. I find it fascinating. Robert Mueller is the grandnephew of Richard Bissell, who was fired by President Kennedy along with Alan Dulles for lying to him about the Bay of Pigs. And he's married to Anne Cabell Standish, the granddaughter of General Charles P. Cabell, who was also fired by JFK for lying to him about the Bay of Pigs. And his brother, Earl Cabell, was not only the mayor of Dallas when JFK was killed, but was also a CIA operative, according to a CIA contract agent. What is so interesting, that there are so many links between the various terrorist incidents we are told, were completely unconnected. A Philippine intelligence agent named Edwin Andres had infiltrated Islamic terrorists in the Philippines, and he described a meeting with Ramzi Youssef, the mastermind of the first World Trade Center bombing, and Terry Nichols, who was known as the farmer, unquote, and who, along with Timothy McVeigh, they were the people convicted of the Oklahoma City bombing. Again, using the Turner Diaries as a blueprint. And there was a remarkable article, I think it's still available online, called The Terror Motel, which was authored by a guy named Jim Croden, I believe. I'm operating from memory here at COGAN. And it was in the LA Weekly. And they talked about a motel outside of Oklahoma City. And people working there, including the manager, saw not only people like Zaharias Moussaoui, and also people like Mohammed Atta, obviously one of the 9/11 hijackers there, but also Timothy McVeigh and other Middle Eastern people whom he felt were probably Iraqis. And again, this is at a motel. His testimony has never been impugned. And again, there's supposed to be, it's all rolled nuts, and there's no connections between those things. Some really fascinating work, Ed, was done by the late heroic Daniel Hotziker.
I love Daniel. In fact, he did his first radio show right here with me.
Well, he really deserves to be in the pantheon, so to speak. He did a great job, and he collected a ration of fresh fertilizer for his troubles. And as he began looking into Mohammed Atta's activities in Florida, he not only came across the fact that there was more to September 11th that met the eye, but he came across Germans and Austrians who were the main people that Mohammed Atta was hanging out with. And when he was interviewed by the BKA, that's the Bundeskriminalamt, the German equivalent of the FBI, and he discussed some of the people he had been encountering in southern Florida with Mohammed Atta. He told them about it, and they said that they were the sons, and in one case, the daughter of prominent German industrialists. That is so important, and there aren't many people, there's no way, this should not be misunderstood as conceit. That tracks back to the remarkable and deadly Bormann organization. The Third Reich, it wasn't an aberration. It wasn't caused by people being hypnotized. Instead, it was the outgrowth of the most dominant forces in our society, and it didn't disappear. It went underground, and the economic component of that is the remarkable Flight Capital organization founded by Martin Bormann, and whose security director was Heinrich Müller, head of the Gestapo. There is a book called Martin Bormann, Nazi in Exile. That is one of the books available for download for free, not only on my website, but on the 32 gigabyte flash drive that I have made available. And it is so interesting that so many of Otto's associates were the sons, and in one case, the daughter of prominent German industrialists. And for the record, 155, again, using some of the research of the late, brilliant Paul Manning, it was revealed that the Bormann Group makes liberal use of people who were the sons and daughters of not only prominent industrialists, but also prominent Nazi officials. So the old sitcom All in the Family applies to that, except there's nothing funny about the Bormann organization. I believe, and this is my opinion, I believe they are ultimately going to prove to be the dominant element in the political landscape of our times. I think in 200 years, I think Hitler's birthday will be celebrated as an international holiday. I don't think many of us are going to be around when that happens, but I'm afraid that's going to happen. So, again, that is just some of what is available there. And, oh, yes, at the time, in the late 90s, Mohammed Atta and the Hamburg cell were under surveillance by the Hamburg Police Department. They knew about that cell. They claimed they let the U.S. know. The U.S. claims they didn't. Doesn't matter past the point. But the fascinating thing is that the guy who was the head of the Hamburg Police Department was a guy named Ernst E-R-N-S-T Urlau, capital U-H-R-L-A-U. And in the late 90s, it was the late 90s, about 1998, he was appointed special advisor to Chancellor Helmut Kohl for intelligence matters. And then in the early part of the first decade of the century, he was appointed head of the BND, the German Intelligence Service, of the final incarnation of the Gehlen organization. Now that is a really interesting career pathway. You go from being head of the Hamburg Police Department to special advisor to the Chancellor of Germany on intelligence matters to being the head of the BND. And the BND goes out of its way to recruit from the families of previous agents. And while Ernst Urlau was head of the BND, all of the files of the BND with regard to past operatives disappeared, including the files on more than 200 SS and Gestapo veterans who had worked for the BND. And this happened under Ernst Urlau's watch. Something that I have available for free on my website is an article by the late brilliant Carl Oglesby called The Secret Treaty of Fort Hunt, and it's about the Gehlen organization. And among the things he notes there is that as Gehlen was clearing his deal was working out his deal with the Americans, he cleared it not only with Admiral Karl von Dönitz, the successor to Adolf Hitler, as the head of the German state, but also with General Franz Harder, his former chief of staff, indicating that the German chain of command was still in effect. And later on in that essay, there was a comment from Colonel William Corson, last name C-O-R-S-O-N. He was a Marine Corps colonel in Vietnam who resigned his commission in protest of what we were doing in Vietnam, and he became the special advisor to the Truth Committee and the author of a book called The Armies of Ignorance about the intelligence community. And he described the Gehlen organization as, quote, a front for Odessa Nazis, meaning the post-World War II SS underground, although it wasn't underground, but the Gehlen org. The brilliant Peter Dale Scott, a Berkeley researcher, in another article in Covert Action Quarterly, number 25 from 1986, in an article called How Allen Dulles and the SS preserve one another or preserve each other. He wrote that the CIA was initially set up as a vehicle for the SS cadres that had served Hitler. So, as much as some of this might appear absolutely wacko to some people, they that goes Dave Emory again. He thinks everybody's a Nazi. He thinks everything's a conspiracy. I don't believe in conspiracy theories. Ha ha ha. It just really, when one takes the time, as you have there, to study the record, it becomes only too clear what was actually going on. And I hope that I have done justice to some of what's in those articles. We can't have too much time left here, but it's the best I can do. And the rest of still got some minutes left. Hey, you know what? I'm going to pat myself on the back. I'm doing a pretty good job here. For what in Boston would be called an old fart, and I don't think that violates any FCC regs.
No, we can get away with that one. We can get away with that one.
But, I hope that gives people a running jump onto what those articles are about. Again, the walls came tumbling down. Nazis, fascists, and the 9/11 attacks, parts 1 and 2. And, yes, I almost forgot. I almost forgot. What was her name? There was a Carol Howe. There was again, the old memory banks are doing pretty well. Emory rhymes with memory, yay. There was an undercover ATF informant named Carol Howe who had infiltrated the cell that was involved with blowing up the Oklahoma City building, the federal building in Oklahoma City. And she stated unequivocally that the real mastermind of the Oklahoma City bombing, was a guy named Andreas Strassmeyer, Strassmeier, who was not only the security director at Elohim City, a white supremacist compound with links to the milieu of Timothy McVeigh, but he also was the son of a guy named Andreas Strassmeyer. Gunther Strassmeyer was his father. Again, I haven't done this in a while. Gunther Strassmeyer was Helmut Kohl's chief of staff, and he also was the architect of the actual mechanics of the reunification of Germany. And both he and Andreas, who was a German intelligence officer, military intelligence, were present at the German reunification ceremonies. And many eyewitnesses stated that they had seen Timothy McVeigh in the company of a guy they described as John Doe number 2, who very quickly went right down the memory hole. There is a very strong physical resemblance between Andreas Strassmeyer and John Doe number 2. And Carol Howe, the aforementioned Carol Howe, an undercover ATF informant, said unequivocally that the actual mastermind of the Oklahoma City bombing was Andreas Strassmeyer, and that Timothy McVeigh was his protege, and she passed a 3-needle polygraph in connection with that. Now, Andreas Strassmeyer also was known to have been looking to purchase a Lufthansa surplus Boeing 747. And the question is, why? I mean, if the guy wanted to get around, he didn't need a surplus Boeing 747 to get around. And if what he was planning on doing was becoming a recreational pilot, he didn't need or wouldn't need a surplus Boeing 747. If he wanted to run drugs or guns, you can't land a Boeing 747 on a dirt airstrip in rural Arkansas, for example, or rural Florida or anywhere else. So why was Andreas Strassmeyer, according to Carol Howe, allegedly the mastermind of the Oklahoma City bombing, son of Gunther Strassmeyer, Helmut Kohl's chief of staff, a German army intelligence officer, a man who had a strong physical resemblance to John Doe number 2? What the bleep was he doing trying to get a surplus Boeing 747. And I don't think it is outlandish to entertain at least the possibility that he may have wanted to use or give that to some of the 9/11 hijackers. So
Mr. Emory, I've said that a million times. It makes no sense to hijack when you could buy those planes. People with the money, like the Bin Laden group, could buy planes like that and fill them up with all kind of explosives and all kind of nuclear stuff, all kind of stuff, man. Really do some crazy damage. But what I think it was is they wanted to up the security at the airports too, to make us miserable going through the airport as well. Part of their psychological operations on us here.
It is certainly one of the. I think that it would be a mistake to see September 11th in only one dimension, but absolutely, I'm in complete agreement. Not only at airports, Ed, but all the way around. What basically, if one wants to understand September 11th, imagine what would happen if I don't get. Although I think it was known in advance that this is going to happen, and they allowed it to happen, I don't think that it was a provocation per se. It was a real attack by elements who genuinely hated the U.S., but it was allowed to proceed. And I think a good way of understanding that is what would have happened if Adolf Hitler was the president of the United States when Pearl Harbor was attacked. What would he have done? He'd gone, oh, wow, we've got to go get the Japanese. We'd go, oh, wait, wow, we've got to, monitor everybody's communications, have them all registered here, check them for hemorrhoids before they get onto a plane. They would have done exactly what they did. And sometimes we could talk about Pearl Harbor, not now because it's a long.
Yeah.
There's so much disinformation about it. Maybe as the anniversary approaches, but there is so much. I mean, September 11th was a godsend, and again, how would a German write the date November 9th, the German day of death, 9/11? And George W. Bush's family earned their money from Auschwitz. They were heavily involved with the financing of Nazi Germany. I've spoken about that in so many programs. The heroic John Loftus has written about that, about so much material about that on the SpitfireList.com website. But if you don't know, there is a quote from 1984 by George Orwell, and I'm going to ask your help here, Ed, because some of us screwed this up. But I think it goes roughly like, he who controls the past controls the present, and he who controls the present controls the future. One of the books available for download free on the SpitfireList.com website and on the flash drive that I make available is a book called Undercover by a guy named Arthur Garumian, who wrote under the pen name of John Boy Carlson. And he infiltrated the Nazi underground and wrote a book about that in 1943 called, again, Undercover. One of the people he talks about in that book is the Reverend Norman Vincent Peale, best known as author of The Power of Positive Thinking. He was a mainstay of Reader's Digest and so forth. In World War II, in the pre-World War II and World War II period, Norman Vincent Peale fronted for a key Nazi operative named, I forget his name, James Edward Rooney or Edward James Rooney, I think the former. In any event, he was one of the earliest and most prominent members of the German Nazi Party. Again, this is pre-World War II and World War II, and it was that same Norman Vincent Peale who married Donald Trump and his first wife, Ivana. His first wife, Ivana, stated unequivocally that Donald Trump, this was in an article, I believe, in Vanity Fair magazine. Again, you could find the reference in the SpitfireList.com website. But she stated that Donald Trump kept a copy of a book called My New Order. It was a collection of Adolf Hitler's speeches and published as a sequel to Mein Kampf. Hitler's political manifesto autobiography. And she stated that Donald Trump kept that in a drawer in his nightstand for late night reading. He admits he owned the book, but says he never read it. But
he had a German butler too, an Austrian or something like that too, that had very racist and all kind of severe beliefs. But Mr. Dave Emory, we are out of time. Time flies when you come on the show, and you have an open invitation to come back any possible time you want to come back.
Let's do this. Again. Spitfirelist.com. All my worldwide work available for free. There's also a 32 gigabyte flash drive. In which case, if something happens to me and on the website, you'll have that. And for my part, right now, most importantly, Patreon. There's a link in the upper right-hand corner of the SpitfireList.com website that will enable you to subscribe to the Patreon channel for $15 a month. You get 3 weekly talks plus 2 bi-weekly Zoom talks. For $22.50 a month, you get all of that plus the articles I've written. I'm about to start another one about WikiLeaks. And then for $32.50 a month, you get all of that plus you get to participate in the bi-weekly Zoom meetings. Ed, thank you so very, very, very much for all of your support and for allowing me to run my yak.
No. I hang on every word, Mr. Emory. Trust me. Spitfirelist.com. That's the main website to go to. But the Patreon is the Dave Emory Patreon, and it's a bargain. It's a bargain at any price. We're lucky to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ed.
Good night, sir.